virtually any mature medtech market. What I see is that many times people underestimate the gap between data and adoption. Strong data will open doors, but broad adoption will come from predictable performance in the real world, not in the investigational site where everybody is there focused to get the best outcome, right? Our focus has been to combine this lesion durability that we're creating safety with a workflow that reduces complexity. And if we succeed in that, right, we shift a device from being interesting to being indispensable.
Welcome, MedTech Gurus. Today, we're joined by David Neale, co-founder and chief executive officer of Argá MedTech, a next-generation pulsed field ablation company advancing treatment for atrial fibrillation. Argá recently reported impressive first-in-human burst AF data demonstrating 94% lesion durability, 100% procedural success, and a strong safety profile using its proprietary coherent sine burst electroportation, or CSE system, delivered through a single, multi-configurable catheter. With decades of experience building and commercializing cardiac rhythm technologies, David brings deep expertise in navigating first-in-human trials, IDE execution, waveform differentiation, and capital strategy in one of the most competitive sectors in medtech. Today, we'll discuss not just the data, but the strategic thinking behind building a differentiated PFA platform in today's electrophysiology landscape. Hey, David, are you ready to be our guru today?
Absolutely. Look forward for it.
Yeah.
Make anyone happy and share some of our scars, better.
Yeah, love it. We're excited to have you. So first of all, tell us something fun or interesting about yourself or your family so we can get to know you a little better.
Well, very good. I don't look it, but I grew up in Brazil in a very international family. My parents migrated there, not with the intent, but almost 100 years ago. So I spent a good part of my life there. What I remember, what's very funny is about dinner. My father would always, since an early age, start firing questions to us during the dinner table. Right? These questions could be as easy as what's the name of this country, or what's the capital of this country, or how does an engine work? Right? And my brothers and I used to kind of compete to see who got the right answer. I guess that, looking back at that, it gave me some of the essentials that make me today. Of maybe having the curiosity to find out solutions, but also having the modesty to admit that I don't know something.
Yeah, that's awesome. Although I bet there are a few days you're like, can I just eat my dessert, right?
That's right. It was, and it would happen even in restaurants.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure. So, David, looking back at your career in cardiac technology, what early experience most shaped how you approach building a company today? Can you provide us some insights there?
I started my career already soon out of university in a big Fortune 500 companies or so. Right. These organizations were always well staffed, good engineers, substantial resources, and repeatedly saw products to market. But I repeatedly saw brilliant technologies, or at least I thought were brilliant, struggle for adoption. Right. The common pattern I identified back then, and talking about maybe 40 years ago already, was that products were being launched with newer capabilities, but they weren't taking into consideration physician workflow, hospital workflow. They were viewed as engineering projects rather than solutions, right? And I saw many of these go. So and then even most recently, last 10 years, I worked on a project, for instance, as an example, fast deployment surgical valve. Mm-hmm. That was great once implanted, but simply the implanting method of it was very, complicated, not natural for the surgeons. And it wasn't an easy learning curve. So that inspired me a little. And any time I'm working on a new business is to really look at the whole picture and try and identify all those bottlenecks up front when it comes to adoption.
Yeah, I love that. We often get into workflow and those types of discussions on this podcast, but that's such a critical component of getting adoption, right?
Oh, it's absolutely. I think the general lesson I usually take is engineering is just not enough, right? If you don't take workflow, and if you don't take workflow from the beginning and not as an afterthought, it will hardly get adopted.
Yeah.
It has to integrate.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then when you began developing Argá's platform, to kind of building on this discussion, what hard lessons from some of these prior ventures influenced how you approached waveform design and catheter strategy? Can you help us out with that?
Yeah, I'll try. Well, we started with the intent of developing a platform and not an application, something that could scale up, right? And that was very important for us. At the time when we started, there was a lot of buzz already in pulse field ablation, but no commercial products were yet on the market. Any literature that you had in scientific magazines were small case reports, annual clinical studies or so. They weren't really telling us enough. However, I had worked in the same field 10 years before. And what surprised me back then was the fragmentation of this field, right? So labs, EP labs, they would have 4 different navigation and mapping machines. They would have a multitude of catheters. While catheters could be used on different navigation systems, they still were too many. And in many procedures, you had to bring more than one catheter in to the procedure, right? So it wasn't really intuitive. So we asked ourselves a very simple question. What if we could address everything that was needed in ablating a heart for treatment of AS with one unique catheter? But one catheter that was efficient. There were solutions out there already, but they are what we call the focal catheter, where you're trying to make lines by positioning dots one beside the other. My analogy to that was, it's like trying to write in a card that's moving. No matter how expensive your car is, you're still going to have trouble writing with a good writing hand, right? So we set that with hand. And I think having determined that from the start made then the natural progression much easier. We were not looking for, as I said even before, another tool that could ablate, but another tool that could be really efficient in ablating, time saving, right, with excellent outcomes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It ties right into that workflow discussion, right? Because I'm imagining as you were talking there, if you got 3 or 4 different technologies sitting in a procedural room, not only the provider, but all the clinical support staff, the nurses and techs and all that, trying to navigate, which one are we using today? Are we going to have to switch from one to the other? That seems like it would be very daunting to try to get through all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not easy, and it's not easy to get engineers to think out of the box as well and looking at the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
I think there's always this tendency of trying to over-optimize an individual component, the device or so, and under-optimize the entire procedure. So you have to flip that around. More broadly, I mean, to anyone, I would always suggest think platform. Think of something that's scalable and not really targeted at one application only. And if you do that, and if you think of the process and all of it, you will end up with a good product in hands.
Yeah, that's great advice. And as mentioned in our introduction here, you just had recently navigated through some first-in-human trials, which are obviously really high-stake moments. So I'm just wondering if you could help us out. What did the BURST AF study teach you and your team about some of the preparation, getting the physician alignment, and clinical discipline? Do you have any thoughts for us there?
Yeah. Probably thoughts even before BURST AF. This wasn't my first study, at least. It was for many in my team, right? So BURST AF was our first in human with this technology, right? And we started with a mantra that first in human is won long before the first patient.
Mm-hmm.
So we invested heavily in training, proctoring, defining the lesion sets we wanted, and again, the magic word, the workflow, very clearly. That discipline contributed to our success and high overall lesion durability. That was the main goal, right? But not to mention, and probably even more important, strong safety profile. We were learning as we were going. Obviously, it's not as smooth as it always is. in life, if something's going to happen, it's going to happen when it's your turn, right? So
Right.
you have to learn something there. We made
Yeah.
we made several iterations to the procedure, to the workflow, to get it optimized in preparation already of the IDE. So if I had to give someone an advice, there is treat first in human as a disciplined experiment, not as a marketing event. I see too many fines, too many fuss when you just enrolled your first patient. You're too early in the curve.
Yeah.
The
For sure.
fuss has to come when you finish when you finish the trial. And until then, it's a rigorous experiment.
Yeah. Gotcha. That's very helpful. And I may put you on the spot here a little bit, but you mentioned you invested heavily in education, right? In that process. Was that internal education, or was that also education with the clinical team that was going to be working with you?
It was both.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, however, when we set the company, we hired a lot of people already with some good background that helped us do it. But education meant teach the clinical application to the engineers. Doesn't matter if they're mechanical, building the cabinet, or working on the software. The more they understood the procedure, what is the intent, the more they could program for it, right? And develop for it, avoiding having buttons in awkward positions or software where you have to navigate through multiple screens before you get somewhere. On the clinical side, it's always very important because people come with different backgrounds. They worked in different studies before. All our team had already strong experience in clinical. However, we had to constantly remind them and just ingrain it in their brains that our workflow is our workflow, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't deviate from it. If you identify something that could be different, surface it. We're ready to hear, but not on the go. We're going to plan every procedure as well as we can. So a lot of time. The cost of education is high, and I think many times people, especially startups, always strapped for cash, tend to maybe sometimes oversimplify it and pay a high price later. It's an investment well worth it.
Yeah, no doubt. And to build on that a little bit, if I might, many technologies look differentiated in development, but then struggle to prove it clinically. So I'm just kind of curious, and maybe you can help our gurus out there. What steps did you take to rigorously validate that approach and offer meaningful advancement? Do you have any best practices you could share with us there?
That's kind of a tough one. But I think we did a few things.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, again, to make sure that it can make it get it proved clinically, is you have to have the bigger picture in mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we started with AF with the proposal of getting the best lesions we could. Durability in lesions is good therapy outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we set a protocol. We had to negotiate it a lot with the regulatory agencies or approvals that had what we call a remapping system, a remapping procedure. And so basically, a patient is treated 60 days after he comes back, he undergoes a diagnostic procedure that's going to electrically map his heart again and see if there are any areas that we missed when we were doing those ablations. Having done half of the study with that gave us a strong certainty that we were on the right track, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a big one, and I think that anything you do when it comes to planning a trial or developing technology, you will always find a couple of these, let's say, gates that you have to monitor to be able to ensure that you're on the right track. It would be very frustrating to run a trial with 300 patients and only find out after 12 months that it didn't work.
Yeah.
So here we put something in the beginning that at 60 days was giving us that. And hopefully building the experience that would then carry into the IDE as we then go to our regulatory study.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And obviously, there was a lot of groundwork there in looking at that to get that outcome. So I would imagine that took a little time to develop that and get it ready to go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of planning time, a lot of cross-functional challenging. We keep our, let's say, engineers and clinical team at the same level. Everybody's free to talk. Everybody is allowed to poke their finger in the other one, as long as in an organized manner and well thought of arguments, right? And that really has helped us a lot. Very candid feedback, very open feedback. It takes us a long way.
Yeah, that's so crucial, right? To have that open communication. I love that. And then, if I've got my facts correct here, your investigational device enrollment, I believe your team was over 50% enrollment quickly. So, what did you learn about like site selection, investigator engagement, and the execution of this? Are there any things that you can share with our gurus out there to help them with this process?
Yes, there always is. This, as I said, this wasn't a first study, so I think we started in a place where we knew something already. But as every study, you're going to see some hiccups, right? So site selection, we did careful site selection, starting by picking sites that had already worked with PFA technology, right? So we weren't looking for any high volume site, but sites that were already familiar with the energy source. Okay. We picked up sites with a variety of experience and use of different catheters, because we also wanted to evaluate how quickly, how fast the learning curve progress, right, was. But we picked up sites mainly because of the investigators. If we thought we had a rapport and we had a close proximity and a strong partnership. I mean, these professionals, the EPs and their staff in the lab, they're all very important for a study. I've seen studies fail because the nurses don't like the product. They don't like the way it's wrapped. It's too cumbersome. It's too big for the lab. So there's small details like that go. So we did a careful selection. We had at the time we did it in 3-4 sites. In the 3-4 sites, we were very diligent. Who are the investigators? What's the volume? You also want centers that can provide volume. How is the staff in clinical studies? Are they used to them or not? Are they contributing? What input they can give to the study? We shared our workflow ahead of time to see if they had anything different. Workflow changes country by country, many times hospital to hospital. So we had to validate all of that up front. But I think the biggest one is really, once you've targeted, is really the handshake and the commitment you have both ways with the main investigator in that site. If he believes in the technology, if he's willing to put his time to learn, if he's got the volume of patients and he's got a very successful first case, he will probably continue. And that was true. I mean, we started in September, late September, and we had enrolled 50% of the study already in our IDE by January. So a little over 90 days. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's quite amazing. And then moving from the first in human pre-market approval, right, is a really long road. What mistakes have you seen companies make during this transition, and what would you recommend to how to avoid them?
Yeah, so in AF, a competitive market, or virtually any mature medtech market, what I see is that many times people underestimate the gap between data and adoption. Okay, so strong data will open doors, but broad adoption will come from predictable performance in the real world, right? Not in the investigational site where everybody is there focused to get the best outcome, right? Our focus has been to combine, let's say, this lesion, the durability that we're creating, safety, with a workflow that reduces complexity. Okay, and if we succeed in that, right, we shift a device from being interesting to being indispensable, right? So we have to get that message out throughout the study for every user in the study that they also put out that change. It's not a new product. This is an indispensable product, right? So one workflow I like is that you have to speak three languages: clinical outcomes for the physicians, operational efficiency for staff and physicians, okay, and the economical impact for all administrators, right? So all stakeholders have to be covered when developing a product and running a clinical study. And if you get all of those three right, you will lead to adoption. Focusing on only one of them may not lead to success. Excellent outcomes with poor usability won't get you there. Excellent outcomes, too expensive, won't get you there. Mm-hmm. Excellent outcomes is a must, right? But it has to be followed with these other two verticals there as well. So, I would say for anyone starting, start with these three, have all those three verticals in mind there. And if you're able to manage them, you've got a winning product. If you don't, try and figure out how you're going to answer all three of them, produce value to all three, because if not, you may fall in the limbo.
Yeah, I love that, especially for our gurus in North America, right? Because in the United States and Canada, especially the United States, things have moved to such value-based in healthcare. And we often see companies stumble around that. But it sounds like you and your team have really had that in focus for a long time to look at that value message. It's not just about the clinical outcome. It's about the whole experience and a return on investment, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And in the case of you mentioned the U.S., it's probably no different than any other market as well. I mean, every single stakeholder looks at a new product with different eyes. Mm-hmm. The hospital administrator has a budget to meet at the end of the fiscal year. He doesn't think of an investment because he's paid for services that goes beyond the span of that budget year. Mm-hmm. So there's no point in talking qualities with him. Quality of life, extended life or something, because that's important for who's actually paying for the procedure, but not necessarily for the hospital. It's good for the governments that healthy populations live longer. The physician, he wants the best outcome for his patient. He wants to be able to do it fast as well. I remember launching a technology once where our biggest selling point was speed, right? Speed. And this taught me a very good lesson, because I was once a Lake District in England speaking to a lot of happened to be EPs as well about this new technology. And I said, well, you'll be able to do an additional case in the day. And one physician goes, hell not. I want to get home for dinner. Five cases a day was a good argument for the hospital, not for the physician.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. It's getting to really what's important, right, for that individual. So, David, I want to focus now on Argá MedTech. You know, as you look at the next stage for Argá, what milestones are you looking at that really truly matter in proving that the platform is ready for a broader clinical adoption? Do you have any benchmarks that you're tracking?
Well, near term, it's certainly the continued generation of high quality pivotal data. If we slip now, we're back to zero, right? So we cannot take our eyes off safety. We cannot take our eyes off efficiency. We cannot take our eyes of all the value proposition that we've done. We think early in the process, we've already thought about what if something goes wrong, what is, or when do we stop or not. I think the earlier you think of those situations, the easier it is to make the decision later, right? Mm-hmm. So for sure, the milestone of getting this high quality data is important, right? After that is, or following that, we have a lot of focus on how do we scale up eventually, right? So getting a good product done is easy. Now, can I produce it in the thousands?
Right.
It's another thing. And that's another area I see a lot of people stumble around, right? We're talking clinical. We forget that once gone through that phase, we have to produce it. It has to be scalable. It has to be priced reasonably, right? A value price. So.
Yeah, and I would think that circles back around to, that investment in education that you were talking about, investment in the right design, right, early on. If you're investing early and staying vigilant, right, that helps create that foundation to scale, correct?
Yes, it does. But you would be surprised when you're doing a first in human and then you're doing an IDE, and then the massive step it is for manufacturability of a product.
Mm-hmm.
If you start from the beginning designing for manufacturability, it may slow you down. When you're a startup, you want to move fast.
Yeah.
So there's a balance there of what you have to do. But yes, the educational part is critical at all steps.
I love that. So, David, for our gurus out there who are listening in and maybe preparing their own clinical trials, what discipline or what advice would you offer them before entering these first-in-human studies? Do you have any thoughts for us there?
Yeah. So, step I usually take is first write down the three main questions you want answered by the study. Right. Those are the must-haves. These are not necessarily only clinical. These could be secondary to the clinical outcomes. They could be tied to data that's going to provide a platform then for reimbursement, for instance, or a differentiated reimbursement, right? I guess new technology is at its best when not only it's better, but it gets paid better. Mm-hmm. And not settling for less. So that's the first step. Write down those. Design your study in a way that you can truly capture all that data, right? Without skipping any. Second, I think I mentioned this before. Second is really in designing your study, design what are the stop rules. You don't want to continue a study if you're not going to get the end result. You better stop early. So fortunately, we didn't have to use these, but I've seen it happen many times, understanding, okay, what is the safety alarm that we're going to look at? What is the efficiency alarm that we're going to look at? Can we measure that efficiency before or not? In our case, we had the remapping that took some negotiating to get introduced, right? But there's always something else. And then finally, I think wrapping it up is remember that the goal is just not to show that something can work under ideal conditions, but that it really works in the real world. So that study has to really also try and identify all of this critically, right?
Yeah.
So good outcomes, very long procedures doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and thank you for that. That was an outstanding summary. So, David, this seems like a really exciting time for you and your team at Argá MedTech. What does the future hold? Where are you going from here?
Well, we plan to finish our study, right? We designed this as a platform. So we're working from the study perspective. We'll be submitting the PMA sometime mid next year or something after a 12-month follow-up. We're going to take this to market. We're already working the manufacturing side of it for scalability, but we haven't stopped. I mean, we designed this as a platform. So now we're going to start addressing another arrhythmia, ventricular tachycardias that are a lot more complex, a lot more difficult to address because they come from different causes and sources, right? And even for the nature of the heart, the ventricle is probably our most important muscle, right? It's what keeps our blood flowing.
Yes.
And so there's no room for errors there. You really need to be precise as a scalpel or something to do these ablations. And that's our next challenge. So take it to market and open another road where we can travel on.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We'll watch and see what those outcomes look like, and wish you the best with that. So,
thank you.
David, first of all, I'd like to thank and acknowledge you for the time and insights that you provided us and our gurus today. If somebody wants to learn more, how do we do that? Is there a website? Are you on LinkedIn? How do we find out more?
We definitely have a website, www.argamedtech.com. There you will find the basis of our technology, our contact information. Anyone that wants to contact me can send me a message through the site. It has a direct link, which I have access to. And on LinkedIn, also, Argá MedTech SA is also a very good way to get into the site, and then find me on the website there, on the LinkedIn. Very easy. We're very responsive. Anyone that has interest, just reach out. happy to share our experience or even share some of our PFA history.
Oh, that's outstanding. So, David, once again, thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you today, and thank you for being our guru.
Yeah, likewise. Nice to join you, and thanks a lot for the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to MedTech Gurus. I am Sylvester Harris, your MC. If you want to learn more about Tom and his consulting services, you can go to www.pctmedical.com or email Tom at tom@pctmedical.com. Now, I can be reached at Sylvester Harris, that's SylvesterHarris 5048@gmail.com, and I'd be pleased to discuss any voiceover work that you may want for your company or broadcast. Hey, thanks so much for listening, and catch us on the next episode of MedTech Gurus.